I usually start my video reviews out with an anecdote or a story, but with The Last of Us, I'm going to cut right to the chase. Naughty Dog, the Sony-owned studio responsible for the likes of Crash Bandicoot and Uncharted, has hit yet another home run, this time with a game that tells the dark, hopeless story of a man and a young girl crossing the post-apocalyptic United States. But this home run didn't just hobble over the outfield wall. It cleared the bleachers, it left the park, it soared into the parking lot and landed with a loud clunk on someone's windshield. The Last of Us is that good. That's significantly better than a vast majority of the games on the market, cementing itself not only as perhaps PlayStation 3's single best experience, but as further proof that Naughty Dog is the best developer in gaming.
Not me.
I know that you are smarter than this.
Really? Guess what? We're shitty people, Joel. It's been that way for a long time.
No, we are survivors.
This is our chance.
It is over, Tess!
The Last of Us is a marvel of presentation, a game that puts you directly into a disheveled and destroyed United States and never lets you forget that you're surrounded by pain, by misery, and loss. You take control of main character Joel 2 decades after a vicious fungus, cordyceps, obliterates humankind. Naturally, it's a decidedly sad situation, juxtaposed against often brilliant backdrops of untamed wilderness alongside towns and cityscapes rapidly reclaimed by nature. Opposing factions, from the remnants of the government to lawless renegades, do their best to survive. But the truth is, in this world, there's very little worth living for. The Last of Us does a wonderful job of putting this hopelessness directly on your shoulders. The despair is tangible from start to finish. Everything littering the game's varied environments is there for a reason. Everything tells you a story from the subtle to the overt. The Last of Us does a brilliant job of setting the scene and making you feel like you're there. It's essentially video games' version of Cormac McCarthy's The Road, and with such high praise comes high expectations, which The Last of Us meets time and time again. Like The Road, The Last of Us isn't so much about what happened to humanity as it's about the tale of two people and their journey. Joel's interactions with a girl, Ellie, drive the story forward, and Ellie quickly becomes the star. Their contextual conversations, which happen constantly, endear you to their evolving relationship.
Man, this is kind of sad.
What is?
All this music that's just sitting here. No one's around to listen to it.
While Joel perpetually has blood on his hands, a product of surviving in such an upside-down world, Ellie is more sympathetic. It's not that she's innocent, she too has killed to survive. It's more that she doesn't know any better. While survivors litter the game that once held a job and had a normal life in the world you and I know, she was born into this desolation, and her questions about what the real world was like before make for some of the game's most enjoyable discussions. After all, Ellie's not even quite sure what a job is, and the real world to her is nothing but a dream. Watching this dichotomy play out is one of The Last of Us's strokes of genius. Of course, the game is gorgeous to boot. It is perhaps PlayStation 3's prettiest game, both in-game and during cutscenes, and the aesthetics are only heightened by a beautifully written story and expert voice acting. These elements drive the story home and put it at the forefront of the experience. And that's a good thing, because as great as The Last of Us plays, at the end of the day, it's really all about the story. I may have so far given you the impression that other humans are the only danger in The Last of Us, but that's far from the truth. You see, that fungus cordyceps doesn't actually kill people. It turns them into frenzied monsters known as the infected, and those foes, who are contagious by the way, are even bigger threats than other humans. They don't practice self-preservation and they aren't subtle. Whether you're fighting the lesser infected called runners or their blind, hyper-infected counterparts known as clickers, the fear is palpable, especially because if the latter so much as get their teeth into you, it's game over. Human enemies, on the other hand, are a bit smarter. They work together and react to what you do. You'll have to approach each fight differently, and this gives The Last of Us an amazing, perpetually unpredictable feel. To deal with his adversaries, Joel has a litany of weapons and makeshift items that rest at the heart of The Last of Us's superb combat system. As you might imagine, ammunition is scarce, very scarce in fact, forcing Joel and others like him to cleverly navigate precarious situations. When and where possible, stealth is king, slinking about environments while quietly and covertly taking out enemies by strangling, stabbing, or otherwise brutalizing them without so much as a peep. But when push comes to shove, hostilities are heightened, and it's not only your firearms that give you an edge. Indeed, by finding the right supplies in the environment ranging from scissors and tape to sugar and alcohol, Joel can concoct a slew of curative and offensive items. This ability gives Joel the feeling of a guerrilla fighter, someone using the environment and all it provides to its fullest advantage. It forces you to make choices, as items are created using ingredients needed to make other items. This makes the player feel both vulnerable and mighty at the same time, as Joel is always a mistake away from death, but a lucky break away from living to see another day. Better yet, the game never ever pauses when you're making these items or toggling through your menus. If you need to deploy a homemade grenade, you'll do so in real time. If you need to create a health kit, you better hope there are no enemies around. The Last of Us totes an amazing sense of urgency that can only be avoided when you're already assured that the coast is clear. And in this world, the coast isn't clear very often. The Last of Us also comes packing a multiplayer mode, and much like Uncharted, it's an aside to its amazing single-player campaign. With that said, The Last of Us's multiplayer modes, Supply Raid and Survivors, are atypical multiplayer options and play wonderfully into The Last of Us's dire mood. What's most unique about them is their ingenious metagame slant that ties into each and every online match you play, no matter who you play with. By finding items throughout the map, you support a group of survivors that you're the leader of. The more you find, the more robust your group becomes, though the survivors you support are occasionally hit by disease and other dangers that you need to figure out ways around, usually by achieving certain statistical milestones in multiplayer maps. While multiplayer is in no way the focus of The Last of Us, it's a nice supplement to the campaign, and it's surprisingly thoughtful and engaging to boot. The Last of Us is a masterpiece, a case study in how games can immerse you, tell a fascinating story, and make you really care about its characters. The travels of Joel and Ellie, which took me nearly 18 hours to get through on my first playthrough, provide one of the most memorable, heartfelt, and outright brutal adventures gaming has ever taken me on. It's as undeniably brilliant as it is raw, brutal, violent, and hopeless. Naughty Dog should be applauded for leaving the PlayStation 3 with arguably its best game, before its successor, the PlayStation 4, arrives on the scene. The Last of Us is unrivaled in so many ways, and I'd recommend it to any PlayStation 3 owner. It's truly a special, one-of-a-kind game. For more on all things PlayStation, keep it tuned to IGN.